Festivals are often seen as joyous occasions, moments of celebration that bring people together. But there are some that blur the line between culture and cruelty, pushing the boundaries of what's considered acceptable. These festivals hide dark secrets and controversial traditions, often banned, practiced in secrecy, or criticized for their shocking nature. Let's begin with Thai Pusam, a Hindu festival celebrated in Malaysia, Singapore, and parts of India. On the surface, it's a commemoration of Lord Murugan's victory over an evil demon, but it's what happens during the festival that draws attention and controversy. Devotees show their reverence by performing acts of extreme self-mortification. We're talking about piercing their skin with hooks, skewers, and even carrying large metal structures called kavadis attached to their bodies. These aren't small piercings either. They're often large, painful, and participants carry these heavy objects for miles, walking barefoot. What's perhaps even more surprising is the fact that many of these devotees claim not to feel any pain. They enter a trance-like state, which for them is a spiritual experience. But for onlookers and critics, this festival is a source of concern. Human rights groups and medical professionals often point to the health risks involved, which is why certain regions have restricted or outright banned these extreme practices. Nevertheless, Thai Pusam continues, despite its more controversial aspects. Next, we head to Spain for the Toro Jubilo festival, and this one involves animals. It takes place in Medinaceli, where locals perform what many would consider an act of cruelty in the name of tradition. During the festival, a bull's horns are covered with flammable material and set on fire. The animal, clearly distressed, is then released into an arena. This spectacle is said to symbolize the bull's strength and resilience, but animal rights activists see it as nothing more than cruelty. Defenders of the festival argue that the flames are symbolic and that the bulls aren't physically harmed, but video footage tells a different story. The bulls are often in visible distress, panicking, and trying to escape the flames. Despite international protests and petitions, Toro Jubilo remains an annual tradition, deeply rooted in the local culture. It's a debate that mirrors the broader controversy surrounding bullfighting in Spain, a tradition that continues to divide opinions. Now let's talk about the Tinku Festival in Bolivia. This one is not for the faint of heart. In the highlands of Bolivia, every year, rival communities come together for what can only be described as ritualistic combat. Men and women engage in bare-knuckle fights, sometimes using stones or knives, and the clashes are often brutal, resulting in serious injuries, and historically, even death. The festival, rooted in indigenous Quechua traditions, serves as a way to settle conflicts and ensure a good harvest by spilling blood to appease Pachamama, the earth goddess. Over the years, the government has stepped in to reduce the violence, trying to prevent fatalities. But the festival's deep cultural significance remains, and even toned-down versions are still violent. Tinku continues to reflect the connection between violence, pride, and ancient ritual, despite efforts to curb its darker aspects. Goose Day, or Antzar Eguna, is another festival held in Spain, this time in the Basque town of Lekeitio. The premise: decapitate a goose suspended from a rope. In the past, this was done using a live goose, though due to pressure from animal rights activists, they now use a dead one. Participants, riding in boats, grab onto the goose's neck and attempt to rip its head off, all while being dunked into the water repeatedly by the crowd pulling the rope. It's seen by some as a test of strength and endurance, but by others as a senseless act of cruelty. Despite the changes to the practice, Antzar Eguna remains a controversial event. Animal welfare organizations still argue against it, but for many locals, it's a time-honored tradition that they continue to defend. Moving away from Spain, we travel to Vanuatu in the South Pacific, where the Naghol Festival takes place. This festival is not forbidden, but is certainly dangerous. It involves men jumping from wooden towers as high as 30 meters, without any safety equipment, save for vines tied to their ankles. The goal of the ritual is to come as close to the ground as possible without hitting it. It's a test of bravery and is believed to ensure a good yam harvest. The problem? Sometimes the vines break or they're mismeasured and the jumper hits the ground. Injuries are common and deaths have occurred, But this has not stopped the tradition. Every year, locals and tourists gather to witness the spectacle, a mix of danger, tradition, and culture that continues to fascinate and terrify. In the remote jungles of Papua New Guinea, many indigenous tribes still perform secret initiation ceremonies, shrouded in mystery and taboo. These rituals mark the transition of boys into manhood and often involve tests of extreme physical endurance. One of the most controversial practices is scarification, where boys' skin is cut to mimic the scales of a crocodile. This painful process symbolizes strength, resilience, and transformation. Critics argue that it subjects young boys to unnecessary pain, but within these tribes, it's a revered tradition. The ceremonies are kept away from outsiders, and their secretive nature adds to their mystique. Despite external criticism, these rituals remain an important cultural milestone for the tribes involved. Now to Japan, where the Kanemaru Matsuri, or the Festival of the Steel Phallus, is held annually in Kawasaki. This festival, unlike any other, celebrates fertility and sexual health, with a giant pink phallic statue paraded through the streets. The open celebration of sexuality is a key part of the festival, with phallus-shaped decorations, candies, and souvenirs sold throughout the event. But it's not just for fun. The festival also raises awareness for HIV research and promotes safe sexual practices. Though lighthearted, the Kanemaru Matsuri challenges societal taboos surrounding sex and fertility, making it both fascinating and controversial. In the town of Ivrea, participants engage in a massive food fight, hurling oranges at each other. The festival commemorates a 12th century rebellion, but the violent nature of the event often leads to injuries, drawing criticism for its chaos. In this bizarre tradition, men dressed as devils leap over rows of babies placed on mattresses. The practice, dating back to the 1600s, is believed to cleanse babies of original sin. Despite no major incidents, the risk of injury has raised concerns. Devotees walk barefoot over burning coals as an act of devotion. While it's a test of faith, the physical harm it can cause, especially for the untrained, has made it a point of controversy. Every 5 years, tens of thousands of animals are sacrificed at the Gadimai festival. Though partially banned, the practice continues in rural parts of Nepal, with animal rights activists calling for its complete abolition. In West Bengal, participants throw mud at each other, symbolizing the destruction of evil. While seen as symbolic, the violent clashes and sanitation concerns have led to criticism of the festival. This festival involves men in monstrous masks roaming the streets to scare locals and celebrate the end of winter. Though not physically harmful, the unruly behavior has led to controversy, with critics claiming it encourages public disorder. These forbidden and controversial festivals reflect the deepest traditions of their respective cultures. But as times change, the clash between these rituals and modern sensibilities continues to spark debate. Whether you see them as important cultural traditions or outdated practices, these festivals undoubtedly push the boundaries of what society accepts.